Hey everyone, it is Wednesday, November 15th, 2017, and it's time to go to work on music. It's been a great day so far. I'm in a really good place and excited for a productive session as usual. I am late to today's session, which is not good, so I'm going to sit down and fix that in a minute, create some new habits to make sure that I don't make those mistakes that I made today again. But what I'm going to do as a result is just sacrifice a couple things I would normally do. I'm going to do a super short online class session and then a super quick guitar practice and sort of just take the loss on those fronts for the day and then catch up and make sure that my production time is not compromised. And we all make mistakes. Life is not about avoiding mistakes, although obviously it's great if you can. I think it's about learning from your mistakes and avoiding repeating mistakes. I think if you could do that, you can make some pretty significant progress. So, on the production front, it's going to be mostly focused on drums today. I made some pretty significant headway yesterday with the track and sort of the opening fill, I guess. I don't know if it's really a fill, it's more like an intro. That's sort of like an intro fill groove kind of thing. And then I'm going to start working on the main groove of the song and hopefully get those parts tracked today, or close. And then I'm going to take a break. I'm going to dive in the second half of the day to the guitar solo, listen back to the takes I did yesterday. I also got my brand new practice amp from Blackstar, which I'm really, really excited about, so I'll probably unbox that and sort of get that up and running so that I can use it tomorrow for practice. So appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. I'll talk to you guys in a few and update you with my progress at the end. Here we go. Alright, very productive first half of the day despite sort of shooting myself in the foot almost on the time front. What I did is, like I said, I just cut my losses with the online class front and my guitar practice for the day. That saved me about an hour. And then just jumped right into the production front and warmed up on the drums and just started working on this lick that opens the tune and using the metronome, speeding it up slowly over time. And the thing I really neglected was practicing counting it out loud, like I've been talking about with the guitar solo. So I did a few takes there a moment ago, and what I realized is just the takes when I was sort of freewheeling it were just really loose. And it sounded good while I was playing it, but I didn't get, when I listened back to the recording, it's like, wow, that's really off. And when I started counting the takes, that's when it just, boom, tightened up. So I guess I just, when I was learning how to play, I just conditioned myself to count everything out loud, and that's just how my brain functions now. Certainly when I was recording drums as a kid, that's how I would make sure things stay locked, and I did some research, recording myself not counting, recording myself counting, and it's just counting it is the key for me when it comes to recording. I'm realizing now. Maybe that'll change over time, maybe I'll transcend that technique, but I think for now it's time to just embrace it and just understand that, like, this is my path. And I'm really curious what other artists do, and I tried to ask Satch at one of his clinics, a couple years ago, and I think the question just got mangled or lost in translation and it didn't really connect. But I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how other people get their results, as long as I'm getting the results I want with my process. Like, that's that's it, right? So that was sort of my realization for the first half of the session here. I'm gonna have some food and take a breather. I just worked for maybe like 2.5 hours there, and I'm gonna jump back in a little bit, and I'll update you guys at the end with what I accomplish. See you in a few. Alright, so I was just listening to some guitar takes from yesterday, and most of them when I started listening were just not that great, and some obvious problems, and just weren't connecting. But I knew there was a couple sort of diamonds in the rough. I knew I had a couple from yesterday that I was feeling good about when I tracked them. And I just listened to one that's really, really good. Definitely might be the take. It's not perfect, like in terms of how clean I played it, but the rhythm is really there, which I wanted, and the feel and the vibe and the emotion is really there. Like with the wah-wah pedal, I did some things on that take that I don't think I got on other takes. Some of the extra distortion or extra string noise actually sounds really cool, and it's tasteful. It's not just crappy. It doesn't sound like a horrible mistake. It kind of adds to the expressive power of the part, if that makes sense. And I think that I hit that sweet spot of like it was technically accurate, but also went a little bit beyond that. And that's kind of what I was getting into at the end of yesterday's video, talking about the Steve Vai sort of two levels to technique. The first being like you can play it accurately, and the second being more about inspiration and flavor and communicating something, like really delivering the message, something that goes beyond just the nuts and bolts of the notes and the note values and the pitch, if that makes sense. That's more like the first level of technique. The second level is going, what he calls going deeper than the technique, and what I understand that to mean so far, as far as the clinics I've been listening to from him, is more about delivering your message, expressing your voice, what he calls finding your note. And I think this take captured a lot of what I want my guitar playing and my soloing in particular to be. The best example that I always cite in terms of like what I'm aiming for artistically is Eddie Hazel, who some of you guys might be familiar with. He was the guitar player in Funkadelic for some time, and most famously did the very long Maggot Brain solo on the album Maggot Brain. I'll be honest and say that that solo is not my favorite playing of his, although I understand why it's famous. It's pretty remarkable playing, and the story behind the track is really interesting. George Clinton allegedly asked Eddie Hazel to imagine himself at his mother's funeral looking in the casket and then play the solo thinking about that, which is like some deep studio psychology stuff right there, right? And obviously seems to have done the job well. But I more really like his guitar work and solo work in the other tracks on that Maggot Brain album, particularly Super Stupid, which I believe he sang on as well, and also Hit It and Quit It, which on the ride out at the end of that song, you know, he's really tearing it up, and there's so much power and fire and emotion in his playing, but it's also so technically and rhythmically precise. It really reminds me of like how Billy Cobham plays drums. If you're familiar with Billy Cobham's stuff, you know, his time feel and his pocket combined with his chops are just sort of overwhelmingly awesome at times. But when I went to a Billy Cobham clinic, you know, people asked him if he practiced a lot with the metronome, and he was like, no, not really. And I think the same is true actually of Yngwie Malmsteen, who I don't think did a lot of metronome practice, allegedly, or according to himself. He just said, like, I knew how I wanted it to sound. I knew I wanted it to sound clean. I just used my ears, and that's how I got so fast. And yeah, I just find that really fascinating and really interesting, you know, especially gauged against what I was talking about with myself before and my own rhythmic accuracy as a drummer, at least, of like really feeling like I get the best results when I'm counting things, like thinking very intellectually about it. Maybe that's just because I'm more of an intellectual person in those respects, and my approach to music can be very intellectual. But I like not, I don't tend to gravitate toward music that goes too far in the intellectual domain. I like there to be some balls in the music, if that makes any sense. Some guts and some heart is probably the more accurate way of saying it, and most likely the less controversial way of saying it. So anyway, I feel that I may have captured that with this take, which I'm really excited about, and I listened to it a few times, and I could tell, first of all, I was kind of getting my mind blown, because I was like, wow, this is really powerful. This is a really powerful take. Just sort of getting swept away as a listener, which is always a good thing. But that also was sort of blinding me to the perspective I feel that I want as a producer, which is, okay, I want to notice that, but then I also want to have some objectivity of just like, okay, is it really what we need it to be as a finished product? So I am just taking a break right now, and I'm going to listen back to the rest of the takes I did, and then re-listen back to that take again, and we'll see. That may be one I just keep for a while and then revisit it later on. We'll see. I'm not sure, but I think I'm going to take some time right now to just unbox my new amp, just to kind of have some fun and also take a little breather from listening so much. And I am really, really excited about my Blackstar HT1. Hopefully you guys can see, and I'll probably speed this up a little bit because this usually takes a while, but I will probably just fast forward this bit. And yeah, if you don't know much about this amp, it's an all-tube amplifier. If you don't know much about tube versus solid-state amplifiers, it just has to do with the difference in the circuitry of how the electrical signals are processed and amplified. And for a long time, vacuum tubes, which is what tube amplifiers use to amplify sound, were really the only practical and efficient means of amplifying signals. So things like televisions, telephones, etc. used vacuum tubes for many years, and more recently they've been replaced by digital modeling technology and also what are called solid-state transistors, which can, for the most part, very accurately mimic the amplification of tube amplifiers, vacuum tubes, and they're also, I believe, what give us things like, modern computer technology and awesome digital technology, and then of course awesome amplifier technology as well. But the thing about vacuum tubes is it does give you more analog sound because it's not having to approximate any wavelengths, and it also tends to amplify even-ordered harmonics, which is sort of like an octave in music, which is just naturally pleasing to the ear. Talking about that anymore would get pretty deep into like the science behind music, I guess, and maybe even philosophy behind music, about like why things that we like sound good, why we have a 7-note scale, where equal temperament comes from. And there are some great books out there about that I'll recommend to you guys, probably in a different video, because I can't remember exactly what the name of the book is that I was working through for many years on that. It'll come to me. But yeah, I've always dealt with solid-state amplifiers as a guitar player, and I really wanted to try the tube thing out. And I haven't been looking for a new amplifier in a very long time, but I wanted a practice amp, so I was kind of thinking about, like, let me just get something cheap and simple. But then I realized, I'm a professional now, and I want something that's pro-quality results. I want a real piece of gear. I don't want to be practicing with something that doesn't sound like how the guitar that I'm playing is actually sounding. I want something that's an accurate depiction of what I'm doing, because the whole point of getting it is to improve, and I've said that before. So I'm really excited about this little guy, and excited to share it with you guys and kind of let you know what my thoughts are on it. There's many, many reviews out there on this particular amplifier. It's been around for a long time, but hopefully my experience will be cool and unique. And the other reason I got it is it's a different vibe as far as my guitar sonic palette goes for recording, and this is a really popular recording amp because it has a great direct out that bypasses the speaker in the amplifier and just goes straight into your recording interface, so you can get that really warm analog sound. You can get that kind of classic rock crunch and fuzz and distortion sound, and there's no bells and whistles on it. It's just no reverbs, no delays, no nothing. It's not about having fun, which I know sounds kind of intense. It's all about improvement and practice and really having accuracy, the way you would want in studio monitors. You don't want studio monitors that make your mix sound really great unless you're trying to impress your clients. You want studio monitors that tell you how the music actually sounds. You need an accurate reference point in order to be able to make appropriate decisions. So that's kind of what I'm going for here, if that makes sense. So I'll stop talking and bust this guy out. Alright, and here it is, and man, it is super beautiful. Usually when I hold the camera like this, there's a lot of noise, so hopefully what I'm talking about is coming through. And I just love the design of it. It really had the right vibe that I wanted from the amp. And I know that might sound a little weird, but I've realized a lot of my artistic decisions, just like I was talking about with the solo, it's not necessarily all about the technical stuff. I need the technical stuff to be there. That's sort of like the baseline, but then what about the vibe? What about the experience, you know? What about the flavor of what you're doing? And I think about that way with, it's like a car. It's like, yeah, you need the functionality of certain things in a car, but then like, where's the style? Where's the taste? Where's the thing that makes you want to drive it? Where's the stuff in your amp that makes you want to sit down and play it? What makes it beautiful to you? Is it representative of what your artistic persona is about? And I feel like this definitely captured that for me. So I'm gonna plug it in and play around with it a little bit, and then get back to listening. Okay, honest assessment on my first playthrough with it is that's kind of dangerously awesome because it just makes me want to play. And I think that's why I've been practicing not plugged in for so long, because when you get the effects going and you get the vibe going, I just get carried away. It's like I just want to make music, you know? And sometimes that's destructive to like, okay, let me focus and just play this C diminished chord in every single inversion I can think of. That's a little different, right? And then it's like, oh, right, like when I invert a diminished chord, nothing happens, like as far as the shape goes. And it's like, oh, well, what's that about, right? It's all just minor third intervals. That kind of thing. It's honestly, it's pretty helpful to just not have the guitar plugged in. So I'm in some ways regretting my purchase, but because it's too good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not regretting it because the gear is not functional. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this might actually be taking me the wrong direction. So now I'm realizing it could have been good to just buy a crappier, like battery powered amp. Not crappier, but just like smaller, less fun kind of amp. Like maybe I was looking at the Boss Katana Mini and also the Blackstar Fly 3, which are just these little battery powered, tiny little plastic things. Whereas this is like a legit amplifier, like this is really, it's the real deal. So I'm excited. I definitely get the analog thing. I definitely get the appeal now after playing with that. It's super warm, it's super beautiful, it's like a blanket. It's just like a warm, toasty, soft blanket. So I am not sure what I'm going to do about that. I'm going to stop playing for now and get back to work and listening to stuff, and hopefully that purchase will not prove to just be a toy, but if it does end up being that, maybe that's okay. And maybe I'll get another practice amp, or maybe I'll just stick to practicing not plugged in, just for a couple different reasons. And if I do need to plug in, I'll just use my GT8 and the headphones or something like that. So I'm not sure if I can bring myself to return it at this point, but we will see how it goes. It definitely opens up the sonic palette and gets me inspired to play and make music and just change my approach. So we'll see how that fits in as time goes on, but I'm really happy with it. They did an amazing job. All the reviews I heard about were really stellar, and I get it. I totally get it. This is a legitimate, amplifier for a very good price. So if you guys are looking for something analog, that's definitely a good route. It's not the only thing out there, but it's really good. Back to work. definitely a really good day overall. It was not as good as it could have been, unfortunately, and that's a good lesson going forward, to just make sure I maintain my focus 100% and avoid distractions, of which there are just, it's just so easy to give into that stuff, man. Anyway, I got back into listening to some of those solo takes, and I think I'm just feeling a little tired, so I'm not going to trust too much my judgment. I think my ears, by the very end of the day, aren't necessarily the same as what they were earlier in the day, so I will give those takes another listen tomorrow, and just compare some of the best of what I have right now. I'll be honest and say, like, none of them are, well, actually, a couple of them are almost perfect. I don't know if I want a perfect take, or if I want something more characterful, or that has some slips and screams and stuff here that weren't necessarily intentional. I don't know about that, so I may continue to track. I may keep tracking it. I may search for something even tighter and cleaner, because I have a couple that are pretty tight and pretty clean. You know, honestly, guys, probably some heavy compression would do it. I think it's just like sometimes the sound thins out a little bit at the end if I get tired or if I get nervous at the end of the take, because the first part of the take was good. I'm just learning to combat that stuff, and it's a really interesting journey. I think this solo right now is a lot more than just getting a good solo for this song. I think it's more like a personal thing right now about my development. But I feel good. You know, I'm really proud of myself for pushing beyond what I had before. What I had before, I compared it to the original solo. I've heard that solo a lot, so that sounds good to me already. It sounds familiar. But that solo was really good. I could have, like, done a little punch-in on a certain part, cleaned it up. I'm sure a lot of people out there do that stuff. Some people just punch in for the effect of it, like Satch talks about that a lot in his biography, Strange Beautiful Music. So maybe I'm just working too hard. I don't know. Let me know if you guys have thoughts on that or a perspective on that. But oh, it's really raining. I'm just going to kind of go long here at the end. Yeah, I'm not totally sure what to do. I'll just sit with it a little bit longer. I think I can definitely use some more listens to those takes. And yeah, I'm just really happy that the standards are getting raised. That's what I was going to say. The previous take was already phenomenally good. There was just one little section that I was a little iffy on, and even that sounded like it could have been okay. And I think I'm just experimenting with pushing my own limits and raising the bar beyond where I've ever raised it before. And it's kind of cool, you know. It's hard to do that. I think there's something about the mind that resists that process for some reason. Maybe it's like an evolutionary thing, like, don't waste my energy on things that aren't essential to my survival or happiness or something. But this has been a really beautiful experience. A lot of it has been sparked by a book I've been reading recently called Relentless by Tim Grover. He was Michael Jordan's coach back in the day and has coached many great athletes like Kobe Bryant, mostly basketball players, Dwayne Wade. And yeah, the guy just has a really interesting outlook. You know, the writing, not a huge fan of his writing style, but it seems authentic to him. And the message of the book, definitely, I don't think I agree with everything he says, but when I read a book, I try to open myself up to it and just, you know, take what I can from it and then leave the rest behind. But honestly, the overall thrust of the book is definitely giving me some tools and some strategies to, like, push myself way further than I've ever pushed myself. And I think that that's his deal, you know. That's his MO, is like, I want to take someone who's already great and push them 1,000 times farther than they even thought they could go. And he kind of teaches you how to do that for yourself, which is pretty amazing. You know, it's actually a really powerful book. Now that I'm talking about it, I mean, it's hard to put it into words because the ideas are so, they're deep ideas. But he presents them in a very matter-of-fact way, so maybe that's what's kind of messing with me a little bit. But Tim Grover, man, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience. Just thank you, man. And I kind of feel like I'm crazy for going to these lengths, but I think that's sort of the limit that you want to push if you want to push boundaries. You want to push your own boundaries You want to push the boundaries of what's possible, what's been done by humanity previously. You want to show the world what's possible. You want to show yourself what's really possible. You want to live without limits. That definitely takes something. That takes some serious commitment that's way, way, way beyond the average level of commitment to something. I think that's what I'm saying. So overall, an amazing day. I mean, an amazing day of life. I'm just talking about like the session specifically versus like my specific goals right now of finishing this record and making it as good as possible. Like I probably could have been a lot more focused today getting that done, but given that I started late and compromised myself, I'm happy with how I managed that as the session went on and didn't shoot myself in the foot too much further. Busting out the amp was a questionable decision, but that had to happen at some point, so, you know, why not today? And I hope that I don't sink too many hours into that before the record is finished. I feel like after the record's finished, I can kind of like move into that zone, but I can already tell that that is opening up this entire other realm of gear acquisition that is just like, man, I don't know if that's the place for me to go right now, you know, so, yeah. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys are out there grinding towards your goals, enjoying the process. That's what I'm out here doing, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for more. Till then.